Welcome to the Deep Leadership Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Jeff Fischer. Jeff is the co-founder and president of Longhorn Vaccines and Diagnostics. Before starting Longhorn, he was an executive vice president and CFO in the biotech industry. He is a former infantry officer in the United States Marine Corps, and I am excited to have him on the show to learn more about his experiences in leadership in the biotech space. So, Jeff, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
It's good to meet you. First of all, tell us what you do. What do you guys do at Longhorn Vaccines and Diagnostics? What's your mission, and what are you in business to do?
So we're a commercial stage diagnostic company with a sample collection technology for molecular sample testing. We were the original product in our category with the FDA and sold about 70 million units of that product during the pandemic. On top of that, we are also a preclinical stage vaccine developer company working on universal influenza vaccines and universal influenza, universal coronavirus, as well as a tuberculosis vaccine.
All right. So I got to ask you this. How did you get started and why did you focus on infectious diseases? This seems like a very complicated business, a very complicated scientific business. So tell us how you get started.
I was actually not expecting to end up in this business. It's really kind of the family business. My father was an Army pediatric infectious disease specialist who had made a discovery during his time in the service and was forced to start a biotech company. I went off into the Marine Corps out of college, went back after my time in the Marine Corps, got an MBA at the University of Texas at Austin. And then he asked me to come join him to start his second biotech company. And so I did that. That was a traditional venture capital backed biotech company. We took products into phase 2 testing in premature babies, and then we sold that company. And so when we sold that company, we decided that we wanted to do something very challenging, and that was to develop products to be prepared for an influenza pandemic. This was in 2005, and we saw that there was potential for certain influenza viruses to become a pandemic strain. And so we started Longhorn Vaccines and Diagnostics to develop diagnostics that would affect a pandemic, as well as a universal influenza vaccine that might prevent a pandemic.
That makes a lot of sense. So, what was your role in getting the company started? It doesn't sound like you had the deep medical experience, maybe like your father, but what was your role? And, you being a Marine infantry officer, how did that play into basically, the leadership skills, to be able to bring that team together and be able to accomplish your goals?
A lot of what we needed to do was to build a team, and we needed to find the right people. We needed to set up the right facilities, give them the resources necessary to do what they needed to do, give them direction, and then allow them to do the work that they needed to do. And so a lot of that was my role on the business side, was to ensure that we set it up properly. We had the right people in place, and then we were able to go off in a direction that would put us in a position to succeed.
So when you talk about building a team, getting facilities, how do you find the right people to do something as difficult as what you were trying to accomplish? Are you looking for people with past experience in doing it? Are you, it's kind of interesting because my company's in the, we make products for electric utilities. And so there is an industry there, and and it's sort of a small industry, and we know the players. And so it was easy for me to be able to put together a capable team fairly quickly. Is it similar like that the people in the space, or the type of experience you're looking for when you're putting together? Are you finding people from other small companies, or are they coming from large companies? How'd you build a team?
Well, we followed our network of people that we knew that we trusted, that could tell us who the people were that had the experience and maybe were not on other people's radar. And so in our case, to start on the diagnostic side, we found a very young PhD student that was working as a contractor with the U.S. Air Force in San Antonio that was doing a lot of the exact work we were doing. He was pretty unknown to most of the people in the area, but he had a very specific background that we were looking for. And it turned out that they were closing his unit and the base that he was working at and moving it to Ohio. And he had a young family, didn't want to move. And so instead of trying to move him, we went and set up a facility for him where he wanted to be, and then let him build a team. And we supported that so that he could really do the work that he needed to do. And then we really kind of provided oversight as well as commercialization background. And so that led to our key product on the diagnostic side, our sample collection technology. And so that was really just the case of finding the right person, but not necessarily with the background that people would have expected.
Yeah, it's interesting. And what it sounds like you did too was you built the team around the person. You found a key individual, maybe not a traditional person in that, and then you built a team around it. It's kind of interesting. Yeah, I mean, how did it? We talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, and one of the things that you find is that every person is critical in the early startup team because it could represent 20% of your, one person could be 20% of your workforce, in the beginning. So finding those, needles in the haystack, these, diamonds in the rough, or people that have this potential is hard to do. Did you have a lot of people from the military in your initial team, or just so happens this individual was?
So initially, yes. One of our original team members was a retired 2-star admiral. He was our operations officer. And so we tended to look initially in the military or with people who had a tie to the military. It's just what we kind of knew. And that has worked very well for us. But we've also found great people through other means. And by treating people well in previous companies, we've also been able to bring in people who worked with us in the company we had before, come back and work with us and help us grow this company. And so my CFO started with me over 25 years ago. And at a previous company, we've now brought her in, and she came in pretty early and kind of grew up as from being our accountant to being our CFO. Another young woman who started off at our previous company as a lab assistant is now runs our vaccine group. So sometimes it's a matter of going and finding the right person who has all the skills and has all the capabilities. And the other is finding somebody who's just a hard worker, somebody who wants to learn, and somebody who's going to be loyal and provide what you need. And so we've had the benefit of doing both. But you can't have enough smart people around you, and you can't have enough people that are willing to just put in whatever it takes.
Yeah. Do you find yourself, I mean, now you're 17 years in, do you find that the lessons you learned in the Marine Corps that you still apply every day? Are there certain things that you were in the military like as long, essentially as long as I was, but the things I learned under the ocean I apply every day. I'm just curious if there are certain things that you learn in the Marine Corps that are applicable to what you do daily.
Absolutely. And I think giving people the ability to do their job is one thing. Not trying to overmanage. That's one of the things that I've hired great people and I let them do their job. And sometimes they're doing a job that should be my job, but they have a better relationship with the person. I've got one senior vice president that's closing a very large deal for us. Hopefully it's going to close tomorrow. It's a deal that normally I would have had the relationship, I would have been the one who was in the middle of closing it. But he has just built the relationship from the beginning and has really maintained it. And he's the better person for this project to manage that. And I give him full trust to get it closed. And I think that's one of the areas that I've learned in my time is that sometimes it's not about your rank, it's not about your title, it's about the job and that you're the right person to do it, or there's somebody else in the organization that's the right person to do it. The other area is making decisions with less than 100% information. And that's something that I do every day. It's something that we had to do during the pandemic. We went from manufacturing 100,000 units a year to manufacturing over 1 million a week. That was all done at a time where we couldn't travel. We couldn't really go visit sites. We were adding manufacturers. We were really doing a lot of things sight unseen. And we knew that certain things weren't going to work, but we knew we didn't have a choice but to move forward, be aggressive, do things with the information we had. And when the information changed, then we modified them. Some suppliers didn't last very long. Others became crucial suppliers. And I think that was part of what I learned in the Marine Corps was you never have all the information. And by the time you do, it's already changed.
Yeah, that's a really important lesson. That's one of the things I talk about, especially at least for me as a startup company, speed was important. Momentum was important. We never had all the facts. We never had all the details, but to me, it was always like, we need to get to the next level. We need to get manufacturing. We got to get the products designed. We got to get the manufacturing set up. We need to get our first customer. We got to get to the trade shows. It was like, maybe it wasn't perfect when we got to the trade show, but we learned some things at the trade show that we're able to correct. And so I've always believed that momentum and speed, especially in a startup, are critical to your success, is you've got to keep moving. And that's something that we've done. And the other thing too is like, especially what we found during the COVID was that the big companies can't move as fast as us being a smaller company. So our agility actually was an advantage when the wind shifted. When the conditions on the ground changed, our speed was something we could use that helped us grow our business. So so I think you're right. That's something I learned in the military too, is that you never sort of have all the information. You have 90% or 60%, you have to make a decision.
Right. And I think the other side of that is making sure your people are giving you all the information they have as quickly as they have it, whether they think it's either applicable or whether they think it's something you want to hear. And I think that as a decision maker, as a leader, you have to hear the good and the bad, because sometimes what your people think is bad news is the exact piece that you need to make a decision. And sometimes pulling back and reassessing based on information is crucial to the next stage. And I think that making sure that people realize that when you come to them with information that they may not think you want to hear, that you accept it and it's not an opportunity to take it out on them. It's just information. It's not necessarily good or bad, but it's part of the puzzle.
Yeah, that makes sense. Don't shoot the messenger. But I had a guest on my last guest. We were talking about being a good news company, and there's a problem with that where everyone's just bringing good news. And as a leader, you want all the news. I don't need just the good news. I need all the news. If it's bad news, you need to tell me because I need to know that. That needs to be part of my in the equation when I'm making a decision. So yeah, I think that the idea of not shooting the messenger is really critical to make sure that you have an environment where people do bring that bad news to you.
Yeah, there's a great saying that bad news is not like wine. It does not get better with age.
No, not at all. Not at all. Absolutely. I use a similar analogy on a submarine. When there was a fire, we ran towards the fire because fires only get bigger. So you got to get there and put it out before it gets bigger and can hurt your business. Same thing with any problem in a business. You need to attack it when it's small. Otherwise, you're in trouble for sure. So you mentioned the pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic. you've had to take your business from 100,000 a year in terms of production to 1 million a week. How do you do that? What are some lessons you learned through that whole process?
It's good to have a good team when the process starts, because you really do have to lean on people. You have to let them do their job. You have to be willing to accept that, again, that decisions that are made by others may not be the best decisions, but that they need to be made. One thing I learned about a mistake that I made was you also have to see how the stress is affecting everybody on the team and how they're interacting with each other. I allowed some friction between two employees to last a little too long. And fortunately, my CFO kind of knocked me over the head and said, "Hey, you got to be on this. This is not just two brothers fighting. This is a legitimate thing." And so it was something that I wish I had been on earlier, because I think it did some long-term damage. But I think that when you have everybody on the same page and moving forward, it's amazing what a small team can do. I really had 4 people around me managing that ramp up, and we were everything from building product to shipping product to managing vendors to getting paid. It was really a very small team working really around the clock every day of the week, and it was really fun to watch, and it really did feel like I was back in the military, where everybody was just really had one mission and was out to accomplish it. People were giving up really their entire family life to do what we needed to do. And it was important for the company, but it was also important for the country, because we were shipping out needed product on a daily basis, with states and the federal government calling us and just asking for more, every day. And I think it was great to look back, and other than that one instance, we were always kind of a family, but I think we became even tighter afterwards.
That's just the question I was going to ask you is, I found that when you go through times like that, you really bond as a team. And I was going to ask you that. Did you guys come together as a team? Is that I think same thing in the military, when you go through a tough time or an exciting time or a big change, and you share this common experience with a group of people, you have this bond that's like, oh, we remember that. You remember we went through that together. It's something that I'll see a guy that I served on, back in the Navy, and it's like we haven't left. Like we went through these tough times together, and we just have this bond that it's a connection. Do you feel that way with your team, having gone through that major shift?
Absolutely. I mean, they are, they're people that will be a part of my life forever. And I think that's just the things that they did that impressed me on a day-to-day basis. And none of the people that work for me went to schools with big titles, and they're all people that are just really good at what they do. And I think that's one of the things that I take pride in, much again, like my Marine Corps time. When you're going about doing something hard, nobody looks around and says, "Well, where did you go to school?" It's what are you bringing to the table at that moment? And that's what my team really does. I think one of the challenges that I'm facing now, and I really have worked hard at, is with some of the new executives that we brought in, making sure that because they weren't there during that time, that they don't feel like they're outside of the team.
Yeah.
Being in new people after an issue like that, after a time. And that was something I did learn in the Marine Corps, because you'd go on deployment and you'd have those moments, and then you'd come back and people would leave and you'd get new people, and you had to rebuild the team, and you had to make sure you weren't spending all your time talking about everything that had happened in the year before, but that you were rebuilding a lot of that teamwork. And so I've had the great pleasure of bringing on 2 great executives since the pandemic, and they've really integrated well. And I think part of that is making sure that they don't feel that if you weren't part of the big battle of COVID, that you're any lesser member of the team.
That's a really important point. That's a great point you bring up, because I know same thing. Every time we come back from a deployment, we'd have 20 to 25% of the crew would rotate out. They get all new people, right? And so, they didn't know the jokes, they didn't know the stories, they didn't know the things that went wrong on that last deployment, And so, but no, we didn't leave them out. They just became part of the new family. And I think that's important too, is that when you do have new people come on board after an experience like that, that you don't get cliquey. You don't have this one group of employees that, well, you don't have this ribbon from that deployment, where we all got shot at or whatever. But I think that's a really important point, that you have to integrate the next crew. So you just make sure that they feel part of the family as well.
Yeah, and I think that I've been pleased with the rest of my team for being great at that as well. It's certainly easy as the president to say, "Hey, I need this person here, I need that person there," but sometimes bringing in new people makes people feel maybe you're taking something away from them, or stepping on their toes, or questioning whether they can handle something, especially considering what they were handling during the pandemic. But I think it's more about expanding the capabilities and making sure that we're able to do more. And so I've been very pleased that the team I have has been really accepting of that, and brought and done as much for the new executives as I've wanted them and hoped that they would.
Oh, that's fantastic. So I have to ask you, you mentioned that you're working on a universal vaccine or universal flu vaccine. Maybe I said that wrong, but
no, that's correct.
Yeah, tell us what that is and why it's essential to have in our arsenal against these infectious diseases.
Well, some pathogens are, if you find the right target, they don't really mutate. So if you find the right target, you kind of create a universal vaccine, whether it's shingles, whether it's the new RSV vaccines. But some pathogens, as we've seen with coronavirus, and as we've all known for a long time with influenza, is constantly mutating and moving away. And so the previous strategy has been to chase the virus, to try and get a vaccine as close to the currently circulating strains of the virus. What we want to do was find a vaccine that would cover all of the viruses and not allow the virus to mutate away from it. Allow us to put the vaccine in advance and then last for years. And therefore, it needed to be very comprehensive. And so what we've done is we've looked at thousands of sequences of influenza viruses, and we've done the same now with coronaviruses, and find not just one, but multiple areas that don't seem to change, but seem to be extremely important to the virus. In the case of influenza, we realized it was such a difficult virus. We needed to go after the virus in every stage of its life cycle. So we go after it when it enters the body. We go after it when it tries to enter the cell. We then go after it while it's in the cell trying to replicate, and then we go after it when it's trying to leave the cell to move on to the next set of cells. And so we feel like that for a virus such as influenza, and now what we're seeing with coronavirus, it's just important to really target it with as many different approaches. It's very similar to a military approach where you're targeting it directly with direct fire. You're bringing in indirect fire from naval gunfire, air attacks. You want to constantly keep the pressure on what you're trying to destroy. And so in that case, that's our approach. And we built a new technology called composite peptide vaccines, which allows us to take pieces of the virus that we want to attack and string them together in unique ways, and then put other components that stimulate the immune system in different ways to allow the body to attack the virus in every way that it can, and just not give it that chance to mutate.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, and but it sounds like it's difficult work. I mean, but the payback is huge if you can do it, right?
It is, and it's a great opportunity for really a greater society, because one of the challenges for vaccinating the country, vaccinating the world, is that there's the cost of the vaccine itself, but then there's the cost of delivering that vaccine. And so if you can have a vaccine, one that works very well, but two, doesn't have to be delivered every year, you create great opportunity to provide it to people of all different socioeconomic backgrounds and really all over the world. I think trying to vaccinate the world every year with the same vaccines is just really a losing battle financially, and really trying to get people comfortable with vaccine technology. And so we hope that by taking this approach and building a very powerful vaccine, that we can get people fully vaccinated, not just in the developed world, but really all over in the developing world as well.
Yeah, that sounds good. I know, being 56 years old myself, I mean, vaccines were like essential, polio and chicken pox. I don't know if it's chicken pox, but there was a bunch that you would get, like, kind of coming up. And, but we didn't have the annual one, that wasn't a big thing back then, but it seems like more and more you see these annual shots. And I think you're right. If we can, one and done it and vaccinate you, I think people will be more, open to getting that, if it's effective and it's a one and done kind of thing versus an every year, type of situation. I think people are going to be less hesitant to take that on board.
I think the shingles vaccine that GlaxoSmithKline developed is a great example of that. It's you get 2 shots first year, 6 months apart, and then you don't get it again for 10 plus years. And it has a 95% efficacy rate. So that's what we're striving for. What we want to do is have people want our vaccine. They shouldn't need to be pushed to get our vaccine. They should see the value in it, what it does for their health, what it does for their life, and really want to get it, want to tell their relatives, as I do with the shingles vaccine. Everybody that I know, I'm 54. When you turn 50, they suggest the shingles vaccine. I suggest it to everybody that I know who's over 50. My wife had shingles. It's a terrible disease. And there's a vaccine that prevents it very effectively and does it for a long period of time. And I think that's the model we're hoping to build.
That makes a lot of sense. That's great. Tell us a little bit about the work that you did or you're doing for preventing tuberculosis worldwide.
We started working with tuberculosis on the diagnostic side about a decade ago. Our sample collection technology makes the detection of TB much more sensitive, and it makes it safer for transferring samples. And so that led us to think, well, our technology on the vaccine side really could be used on the TB side as well. And so we started looking for targets for TB, and we found a really good target called the heat shock protein. And we've done some work with it. We've published some results, and we're starting to get some interest from some government agencies as well as from some philanthropic groups about moving that forward. Tuberculosis is very tough on it for a number of reasons. One, it's endemic in the developing world. But it's not really a problem in the developed world. Though in Europe, they're seeing more and more of it. And as we have immigrants coming into the U.S. at a greater rate, it's showing up more and more in big cities here in the United States. But a vaccine to prevent TB is a very hard one to show efficacy for, because it may take 10, 15 years from the time somebody was previously exposed until they start showing symptoms. And so we think that there are some approaches on the treatment side, using the antibodies that the vaccine generates to act somewhat as a surrogate for how the vaccine will protect. And so we see some opportunities. And again, we're having some early discussions with some very significant philanthropic organizations that may be interested in funding a lot of that work. Really, for our viewpoint, that is almost a charitable project that we're working on as well, because it's really going to be mostly benefiting the developing world.
That makes a lot of sense. Wow, this has been a fantastic discussion. Again, it's a subject I know little about, but again, the part that's interesting to me too is the leadership aspect and what you've learned through this process and how you've been able to, bring a team together, do some incredible things. And so my hat's off to you. I mean, it's hard work, and you guys have been very successful. And so my congratulations on your success, and I wish you more of it, because we certainly do need to tackle things like TB. And so your work is essential to that. So I was going to ask you, what final message would you like to leave with our listeners right now?
Well, at first, I'd like to thank you again for inviting me on. I think my view on leadership is that if you hire great people and you give them the resources and get out of their way, they can do great things, and they can make you look a lot smarter than you probably are. So my goal is always to have the smartest people on my team, the most dedicated people on my team, and then just get out of their way.
Fantastic. That's great advice. Listeners, hire great people, get out of their way. I think it's a fantastic way to end this. How can listeners find out more about you and your company?
You can come to our website at www.lhnbd.com. Additionally, if you're of the scientific bent, you can. There's a lot of publications we spend a lot of time publishing. So looking up Longhorn in PubMed or doing a Google Scholar search on our products. I think that there's a lot of great work there. We believe in that publishing and peer-reviewed science is really the best marketing out there.
Well, fantastic. We're going to go ahead and put a link in the show notes for your company. So listeners, if you're interested, if this is somehow, sparked your interest, you can go to their website. A lot of good information on there. I've been on there. So I, encourage you to check it out, check out his company, check out the work they're doing. Again, this is essential work they're doing. It's going to help people live longer, live a more healthy life. And Jeff, I really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your experiences and the things that you learned through this process.
Thank you again for your time, and I really appreciate you having me on.
Well, thanks again. Well, that's it for today. Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and share so we can continue to build a world with better bosses. Until next time, this is John Rennie saying take care and lead well.